Imagine turning on your television in the so-called golden age of Hollywood, where everything looked glamorous, polished, and almost perfect. But behind those shining lights and charming smiles, there were stories the public never got to see. Johnny Carson, a man who knew Hollywood's darkest corners, once hinted at the shocking reality. Not every beloved actor was as good as they seemed. In fact, some of the biggest stars carried secrets that could completely change how we remember them. What if your favorite screen legends were not heroes at all, but villains in disguise? Stay tuned, because Johnny Carson revealed names that will leave you stunned. Before we dive into video, please subscribe our channel. Johnny Carson, often called the King of Late Night, ruled television for 3 decades, but his personal life was far from the laughter and applause that millions of viewers saw. Behind his sharp wit and calm presence, Carson struggled with demons that followed him throughout his career. One of his biggest challenges was his troubled family background. His mother, Ruth Carson, was known for being cold and emotionally distant. Carson once admitted that no matter how successful he became, he could never truly earn her approval. This lack of affection haunted him, fueling both his ambition and his insecurity. His marriages were another painful chapter. Carson married 4 times, and each relationship ended in divorce. He openly joked about his failed marriages on television, but privately, the emotional toll was heavy. The divorces cost him millions of dollars and left him with a reputation for being distant and difficult in personal relationships. Carson also battled with alcoholism. Though he often hid it from the public, his drinking habits created tension with friends and colleagues, and at times, it deepened his loneliness. Fame only intensified these struggles. Being adored by millions, Carson often described himself as a loner who preferred isolation once the cameras were off. Financial battles also plagued him, especially during divorce settlements. At one point, his divorce from his 3rd wife, Joanna Holland, cost him a shocking $35 million, one of the most expensive celebrity divorces of its time. Even in his later years, Carson lived a quiet, reclusive life, carrying the scars of his personal battles. For a man who made the world laugh every night, his own life was a silent struggle, proof that even legends fight battles we rarely see. Number 1. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford was one of the most glamorous and respected actresses of Hollywood golden age, but behind her polished image, she carried a dark and disturbing reputation. To the public, she was the elegant star of films like Mildred Pierce, but to those who knew her intimately, Joan was controlling, abusive, and feared rather than loved. One of the strongest reasons people hated Joan Crawford was her behavior as a mother. Her adopted daughter, Christina Crawford, revealed shocking details in her memoir, Mommy Dearest. According to Christina, Joan was physically abusive, forcing her children to live under strict and cruel rules. She allegedly beat them with hangers, locked them in isolation, and demanded perfection in every aspect of their lives. These stories destroyed the public's image of her as a loving mother and exposed a much darker reality. Crawford's obsession with fame also made her ruthless in Hollywood. She was known for manipulating directors and fellow actors to secure roles, and she was not afraid to sabotage others' careers to keep her place at the top. Many colleagues described her as arrogant, insecure, and impossible to work with. Even her longtime rivalries, especially with Bette Davis, became infamous for their bitterness and cruelty. Her reputation worsened when stories about her alcoholism came to light. Joan often turned to alcohol during her later years, which fueled her unpredictable temper. Friends and associates recalled how she would swing between charm and rage within minutes, leaving people uneasy in her presence. For many, Joan Crawford's legacy is not just about her Academy Award or iconic roles, but about the terrifying image painted by those who lived with her. Behind the dazzling Hollywood star stood a woman whose cruelty left scars far deeper than her cinematic achievements. Number 2. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn, the dashing swashbuckler of Hollywood, became a household name for his heroic roles in films like Captain Blood and The Adventures of Robin Hood. On screen, he embodied charm, bravery, and romance. Off-screen, however, Flynn's life told a much darker story, one that made him one of the most controversial figures of the Golden Age. Flynn's reputation for being reckless and self-destructive quickly overshadowed his career. He was notorious for his heavy drinking, womanizing, and wild lifestyle. Hollywood insiders often joked that he lived faster than anyone else in the industry. His addiction to alcohol and drugs destroyed relationships and derailed his health, leaving behind a trail of broken friendships and scandal. One of the strongest reasons people hated Flynn was the string of serious accusations against him. In the 1940s, he faced charges of statutory rape involving 2 underage girls. Though he was acquitted in court, the scandal stained his image forever. The phrase, "in like Flynn," became linked not just to his charm, but also to his notorious sexual exploits, many of which were considered predatory and abusive. Flynn was also accused of being arrogant and disrespectful on film sets. Directors and co-stars often found him unreliable, showing up late, intoxicated, or sometimes not at all. His disregard for professionalism frustrated many in the industry who struggled to work with him. Financial irresponsibility added to his problems. Despite earning millions, Flynn lived extravagantly and left behind debts rather than security. His lifestyle was so destructive that by the time of his death at just 50, his body had aged decades beyond his years. For many, Errol Flynn represents the dark side of fame, a man adored on screen but despised in reality, where charm gave way to scandal and excess. Number 3. Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby, the smooth-voiced singer and actor, was one of the most beloved entertainers of the 20th century. With classics like White Christmas, he earned the image of a wholesome, family-friendly icon. Yet behind the microphone and movie screens, Crosby lived a life filled with troubling behavior that has forever damaged his legacy. One of the strongest reasons people disliked Crosby was his role as a father. His eldest son, Gary Crosby, published a memoir titled "Going My Own Way," where he revealed shocking details of Bing's cruelty at home. According to Gary, Bing was a strict disciplinarian who physically abused his children with belts and harsh punishments. He described his father as cold, unloving, and obsessed with maintaining control, even at the cost of his children's happiness. These revelations shattered the public image of Crosby as the perfect family man. Crosby was also known for his arrogance and dismissive attitude toward others in the industry. Despite his fame, he often belittled colleagues and used his power to intimidate. His obsession with maintaining his polished image made him distant and difficult to approach. Many who worked with him described him as calculating, aloof, and uninterested in genuine friendships. His personal life further fueled criticism. Crosby had a reputation for being emotionally detached, even in his marriages. His need for dominance strained his relationships, and behind the cheerful songs was a man battling control issues and anger. Moreover, Crosby's image as a clean entertainer was often seen as hypocritical. While he sang about joy and love, those close to him painted a very different portrait, a man who left scars on those he was supposed to care for most. Bing Crosby's story reminds us that even the most beloved voices can hide darkness behind the melody. Number 4. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin, the silent film genius who gave the world the iconic character of the Tramp, is often remembered as one of cinema's greatest pioneers. His ability to make audiences laugh without words made him a global legend. But away from the camera, Chaplin's personal life stirred endless controversies and strong reasons for dislike. One of the most disturbing aspects of Chaplin's life was his relationships with underage girls. He developed a reputation for pursuing much younger women, often teenagers, which drew widespread criticism. At just 35 years old, Chaplin married 16-year-old Mildred Harris, and later, his involvement with other young women led to multiple scandals. These actions permanently stained his image and raised serious moral questions about his character. Chaplin was also accused of being manipulative and controlling in his relationships. His marriages were filled with turmoil, marked by accusations of infidelity and cruelty. Former partners described him as emotionally abusive, self-centered, and obsessed with his own success, often leaving deep scars on those closest to him. Politically, Chaplin faced even more backlash. During the 1940s and 1950s, he was accused of having communist sympathies, which created hostility in America during the height of the Red Scare. The FBI monitored him closely, and eventually the U.S. government revoked his re-entry permit, effectively exiling him to Europe. Many Americans came to see him not as a beloved entertainer, but as a suspicious outsider. His ego was another major point of criticism. Colleagues often complained that Chaplin was difficult to work with, demanding complete control over every aspect of filmmaking. While this contributed to his artistic brilliance, it also created tension and resentment among collaborators. For many, Chaplin's genius is undeniable, but so are the scandals and questionable choices that make his legacy far more complicated than his comedy suggested. Number 5. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando is often hailed as one of the greatest actors in cinematic history, remembered for iconic performances in A Streetcar Named Desire, On the Waterfront, and The Godfather. His raw talent and unique acting style reshaped Hollywood forever. But while his artistic legacy is undeniable, Brando's personal life was riddled with controversy, scandal, and behavior that made many dislike him. One of the strongest reasons people criticized Brando was his arrogance. He had little patience for Hollywood traditions and often treated directors, co-stars, and crew members with open disrespect. On sets, he became infamous for refusing to memorize lines, forcing directors to use cue cards hidden in scenes. While some admired his rebelliousness, many saw it as unprofessional and selfish, making collaboration difficult. His personal relationships were equally turbulent. Brando was notorious for his womanizing and unstable romantic life. He had multiple affairs, marriages, and children, yet was accused of being an absent and neglectful father. Some of his children openly discussed the emotional damage his distance and recklessness caused. His private life spiraled into tragedy, especially when his son Christian was convicted of manslaughter, and his daughter Cheyenne later died by suicide events partly linked to the dysfunction Brando created at home. Brando also gained a reputation for hypocrisy. While he publicly supported social justice causes, privately he was accused of abusive behavior and manipulation. Many critics pointed out the gap between the humanitarian image he projected and the chaos he left in his personal relationships. Later in his career, his erratic behavior damaged his reputation even further. On Apocalypse Now, he arrived overweight, unprepared, and difficult, causing chaos in production. For many, Brando embodied wasted potential, a genius actor whose personal demons and arrogance overshadowed his brilliance. Number 6. Walt Disney. Walt Disney, the man who built an empire of magic, cartoons, and childhood wonder, is often remembered as the creative genius behind Mickey Mouse and Disneyland. To the world, he symbolized innocence, imagination, and joy. But beneath the smiling image of Uncle Walt, there were darker truths that made many people resent and even hate him. One of the strongest criticisms against Disney was his reputation for being controlling and exploitative. He demanded absolute loyalty from employees, but paid them poorly compared to the wealth his company generated. When animators organized a strike in 1941 to demand fair treatment, Disney responded with bitterness, labeling them as communists and even working to blacklist some from the industry. Many artists who helped build his empire ended up despising him for his lack of fairness and empathy. Disney was also accused of being intolerant and prejudiced. Some former employees and historians point to his associations with groups that held anti-Semitic views, sparking ongoing debates about whether he himself shared such beliefs. While not conclusively proven, these allegations continue to stain his legacy. His obsession with perfection extended to his personal interactions. Disney was often described as cold, distant, and manipulative, using his charm strategically while keeping strict control over those around him. He cultivated the image of a kind storyteller, but many who worked with him recalled a man who was far more calculating than compassionate. Even his creative legacy carries controversy. Critics argue that Disney sanitized fairy tales, stripping them of their darker truths to create overly idealized versions that erased cultural depth. For some, this represented cultural domination rather than pure creativity. In the end, Walt Disney's name became synonymous with dreams, but behind the fantasy was a man whose ambition, control, and questionable actions left many to see him not as a hero, but as a deeply flawed figure. Hollywood Golden Age may shine brightly in memory, but the truth behind its stars reveals a far darker picture. From Joan Crawford, cruelty to Errol Flynn's scandals. From Bing Crosby, coldness to Charlie Chaplin controversies. From Marlon Brando arrogance to Walt Disney, ruthless control. These legends remind us that fame often hides deep flaws. Johnny Carson revelations force us to question the illusion of perfection we once admired. The real stories of these icons prove that the spotlight can conceal as much as it reveals, leaving us to wonder, how well do we ever truly know our heroes?